And that's the reason why we are currently doing that research project here.
It costs 4 cents per mile to run. Not that its wealthy customers would be worried with skyrocketing oil prices. But the Phantom is a long way from the production line. It is, as Rolls-Royce CEO Thorsten Müller-Ottfoss describes it, a research project and an experiment.
It might be hybrid, it might be plug-in hybrid, it might be electric. This is what we will find out within that test project here.
Gas-guzzling super luxury brands aren't the only automakers showing off their green credentials at the 2011 Geneva Motor Show. The premium end has weathered the economic storm and has led the recovery. India's Tata Motors, the owner of Jaguar and Land Rover, has its first diesel-electric hybrid.
The Range E is a hybrid, it's a diesel hybrid. It's a V6 diesel engine combined with a strong electric motor and a sizable battery. So the battery via plug-in can be recharged overnight.
With China overtaking Japan to become the second biggest economy, the importance of the market has Tata scrambling to find a partner to keep up with BMW and Mercedes.
And we're talking to possible joint venture partners in China. In order to be able to manufacture locally, you need to identify a partner, and we are en route of doing that.
The Range E is some 2 years away from hitting the road.
Consumers have been expecting electric vehicles on their roads ever since last year. And they were utterly disappointed that they can't buy them a year ago, and they were equally disappointed that it would cost more to buy them at all. So the consumer wants to be painlessly green. He wants to have the newest stuff at the lowest possible price. And it's this expectation management that is now slowly kicking in.
The auto market has weathered the recession. In fact, there was strong growth in the United States, China and India. But Europe remains an area of concern for both luxury and mass market brands. Sales fell almost 5% last year as Europe deals with its debt crisis. This year could see some growth, but that could all be undone by the unrest in the Middle East. But spiking oil prices could be the fuel needed for hybrid and electric car sales to really accelerate.
So let's turn to one of the big players now, General Motors, which was pretty much on the scrap heap back in mid-2009, but looking vastly different now. And joining us from the auto show in Geneva is a regular visitor to Counting the Cost. It is Nick Riley, the president of General Motors Europe. Good to see you again, Nick. Probably the third or fourth time I've spoken to you since the financial crisis. This has been quite a turnaround for General Motors, hasn't it? Back from the brink, back from bankruptcy, and back to profit.
Yeah, GM's doing great all around the world. It's turned around. We've turned around the operations in the US, and our international operations are continuing to do really well, particularly in China and Brazil and other places. In Europe, actually, you've got to ask if the glass is half full or glass is half empty. I see it as half full. We made losses last year, as predicted, but they were much smaller than the losses we had suggested over a year ago. And we look as though we're on the road back to profitability quicker than expected. And we've had great reception from our new cars, so we're feeling much more confident.
But what is it then that makes you so confident about increasing things in Europe, given that, as you've pointed out, it has, dragged the chain for the whole GM brand? What specifically are you doing to help Europe come back to life?
Well, we've been through a major restructuring of the organization, which has taken out 20% of capacity, including closing a plant down in Belgium. We've lost a lot of people in the UK and in Spain and in Germany. We still have some to go, but it's on track. And so our cost level overall is down at a level now where we can make money at a much lower industry. And we have to be there so that we don't lose a lot. And when the industry picks up, then we can make good profit. The other thing is we've had excellent performance in our manufacturing plants, so they've taken cost out there, our quality is high, and the new products that we've launched last year, and again we're going to do this year, are receiving really strong attention. We've won many awards, so we're driving it both on the revenue side and also on the cost side. We know what the plan is and we're executing it.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to ask you, because the way you have described it, it seems that it's mostly cuts that have brought about the savings. to that end, what sort of revenue predictions have you got? Because that is what's going to have to drive growth. If you have cut as much as you've said, then you're not going to be able to cut very much more.
That's correct. You can't cut yourself to success. But we have taken the cost down. But the Mariva last year, for example, a small MPV, won all sorts of awards. The Insignia has been on the market for a couple of years, having won Car of the Year in Europe 2 years ago. The Astra has also won the Golden Steering Wheel, lots of awards, high demand for all those cars. We've upgraded our Corsa, which is another high volume product, and we are introducing a new, larger MPV, the Zafira, which a few years ago defined that segment, and it's a very innovative new model. And then finally, we're introducing the Ampera, which is behind me, that is an electric vehicle, vehicle with extended range, so it takes away range anxiety from purely battery electric vehicles. A lot of interest in that. So there's no question that the cutting is almost done. It's the driving for revenue, and I have to say we were very pleased with our market share in the fourth quarter of last year and the first 2 months of this year, where we're up by over half a percentage point in market share.
Now, let's just go back, Nick, because I'm interested in that car behind you that you pointed out, the Ampera. How much is one of those going to cost? Who are you actually aiming it at?
Well, this is the first generation Ampera. It's priced at about 42,000 euros. But you take off that the various different incentives that different governments are offering, anything from 5,000 to 7,000 euros. So it comes down into the kind of mid 30,000 euros. That's still quite expensive for a car of that size, but it's got a great drive, and of course the fuel economy depends on how much you drive, but it's incredible. Costs €1 to fill up, to recharge. Which means less than €2 for 100 kilometers driving on electric, and most people will drive this car for most of the time on electric, and then when you go on a long distance, it drives further. So there are good cost savings, but no question that the first people who will buy this car are either trendsetters, people who want the latest technology and who are willing to pay a little bit more for it, but also fleets and governments who want to show that they are supporting a move to more green technologies. Those will be the first early adopters, and then when we bring in Generation 2, hopefully the costs will have come down. We can make it a little bit more affordable to the mass markets, and that's where we'll go with Gen 2.
And not a bad time then to be putting out a car that only costs a couple of euros to fill up, because you can't ignore price of oil at the moment. Given all the uncertainty we see with oil, how concerned are you about the effect that's going to have on the auto industry?
Yes, I am, as I'm sure everybody is. If it does go up significantly, then we are fairly well placed in our offerings, including the Ampera. But what concerns me more is if it's a very sharp spike and it's a supply-driven spike, i.e. we can't get oil out of Libya or somewhere, it'll drive the price up sharply. That will affect the economy generally and the car market, and then you're going to get into a lot of kind of desperate selling as people try to buy market share, and that's never good for the industry's profitability.